inviting me.
So should I mention how we met?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Must seem puzzling to people.
So I was at the farmer's market. I don't know when this was, but I had my Slits T-shirt on, and this guy comes up and he goes, you know who the Slits are? I can't believe somebody here knows who the Slits are. And I went, I can't believe somebody here knows who the Slits are either. So he started talking about 80s music and, music in general, 80s music. I said, I've got the show and everything, and been in touch since. Was that last spring, somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was last summer. It might have even been the summer before, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been a little while. And at one point you texted me or you sent me a Facebook message or something, and you had this photo.
Well, I think I sent you the interview from a local newspaper from 1983, from when we played in the basement at the basement stage at ABC Liquors in August.
Yeah,
and it was it was 120 degrees. And I sent you the article about it, and it did. There was a picture of me in there, and my name was written out, and it was titled underneath the picture. And I was hoping that you would see that it was me. I didn't want to, I like to fish for, just see if you can figure it out.
See if I'm paying attention. Of course, I missed it.
You missed it at first. You missed it, but you got it after that, and then.
Well, you said something like, because I just thought, you were telling me that Ministry played Carbondale. I was like, well, that's really cool. And you said, something about like that tour was whatever. That was interesting. And I went, what is he talking about? Why is he talking about the tour? And I looked at the caption. And I went, wait a minute. Hang on a second.
I think I used the right pronoun, or that I was supposed to use instead of just saying they. Or, I think I said we. Something, and then I think put it together.
I finally went, wait a minute. How long have I known you? And you were in ministry?
But it was, it was 40 years ago. It was a long time ago. So it's you can understand where I kind of want to fish it a little bit.
Right.
I mean, it's, if you drag it out a little longer, it's not going to make that much difference.
Right. So With Sympathy came out on May 10th of 1983.
Yeah, I know. It seems like it was a long time ago. And, if I could, let me give you a little background as to what happened. The album was started, or at least a little more than half the cuts were started in Chicago, a Chicago recording company produced by a guy named Ian Burgess, who worked with a lot of Chicago artists back then. And then right around in July or August of 82, we started getting some interest from Arista Records, and we got this news that Clive Davis was going to come into town to see us, to have a showcase, and I want to point out there's a couple of SIU connections here with this story. The showcase was at Metro, which at the time was called Stages Music Hall, I believe, but it's that same venue. And it was funny because there was nothing set up. I mean, there's never anything on the main floor there anyway, but there was one little cafe table with a single chair at it in the middle of it, and there sat
for Clive
Davis, right? And Joe Shanahan, who owns Metro still to this day. He's an old friend of mine. He's actually from the next town over from where I grew up in the south suburbs. He's also an SIU alumnus.
Okay.
Also at the time, our manager was a gentleman by the name of Peter Katzis, who went on to some really great things out in L.A. being a manager. He managed Jane's Addiction, Christina Aguilera, Morrissey, even more recently. So Peter, who was our manager at the time, an old dear friend, also an SIU alumnus.
See, this is all these, these Chicago acts that are just legend. Like Shoes have all these connections to SIU too.
Right.
When I did my Shoes show, I was like, what?
I think a lot of the artistic kids in Chicago, if they didn't, if they were interested in just kind of traveling but couldn't make it out of state, this is about as far as they made it.
Yeah.
And everybody used to talk about SIU, even in Chicagoland back then. It was like, it had a reputation for being a party college and stuff like that. But
well, that was a joke. It was as far away from home, from the Chicago suburbs as you can get and still pay in-state tuition.
Right. So, anyway, Peter Katzis comes up with the idea that he goes, maybe we should have somebody, a cute girl, just, to act as Clive's assistant for the afternoon, and then someone to bring him some drinks, or whatever it was that he needed. And it was decided at the time that Kate my wife of almost 40 years now should be that person. And my wife Kate is also an SIU alumnus. So there's you had the three-pronged SIU approach to selling Clive Davis in the showcase.
And it worked.
And it worked apparently.
SIU
right.
comes through.
And so it wasn't long after that we headed off to Boston. Because we had been playing in Philadelphia, and we met the folks from Romeo Void, and they had just done their second album with a guy by the name of Ian Taylor producing. I think Ian Taylor was kind of one of Roy Thomas Baker's underlings. He was like he studied under him in the studio.
The Cars connection.
And he was working out of the. You're right. There's the Cars connection.
Yeah.
He was working out of the Cars studio. So we went out there in the fall and did a bunch of overdubs on top of the tapes that had been made in Chicago, and then it finished up. We finished up around late February or something like that, and started rehearsals. But and that led up to the May 10th release of the album. I will say though that on May the 3rd of that year. Power, Corruption, and Lies by New Order was released.
Right.
So, as soon as I heard that, and our album hadn't, been out quite yet, and as soon as I heard that, I went, well, it's all over now. Nobody's going to pay any attention at all to our album, because, Power, Corruption, and Lies is a real...
It's like what movie came out the week after Star Wars came out?
Exactly.
There probably was one.
But, the album, I guess, has got a lot of staying power through the years. There's a couple of camps of Ministry fans, and it seems to be endearing to some. So, so I'm here. So.
Yeah. I like we said, like we found out, locally, there are, I'm sure there are people who remember that, I guess it was Airwaves, I think is
it was called, that's right, it was called Airwaves.
Yeah, there are people that remember that show, and
I just remember that we went on very late, and we stayed at some Ramada Inn or something like this down Highway 13, and then by the time we got on stage, it was at least, like I said, 120 degrees, and I don't think we played that long, but it was quite a sweat box. You know how it is here in August.
Yeah. All right, let's play some more music. So you've been picking you told me what to play.
Right, yeah.
But of course, it happened
playlist.
to be everything was in my collection with one or two exceptions. But
this next band we opened up a lot for in '82, and we really looked up to them, and of course I don't want to say we were really modeled after them, but we were quite similar. Maybe the only difference was we had a drummer, so
Yeah. All right. Was that you screaming in the background?
It might have been.
That was
Just now?
woo.
I know.
That was Prime Mental by Ministry. Which, if you're a Ministry fan at all, or even if you've heard some other bands cover "I Wanted to Tell Her," you might recognize that as sort of the pro. Can we call it the proto?
That song gestated a long time. I mean, it was an early piece in sets probably only a month or two after the band's first gig, and it kind of laid around for a while. I don't think anybody knew what to do with it, and then vocals were added, and a few edits here and there and overdubs, and next thing you know, it's "I Wanted to Tell Her."
And we talked about the Holy Ghost cover where you were kind of like, you kind of poo-pooed it.
Whoa, no, did I really?
No, you were like, it was okay, but there was a band, there was a Ministry cover band called With Sympathy.
Oh yeah,
And you said their version was better. Their cover was better.
well, everything I heard from them sounded really good, and they contacted me a little bit. I don't think they made it past the pandemic. I think that they probably only existed in that like the 2 years before the pandemic. But in a change of heart, I guess Al went and saw them live and visited backstage with them. I've seen the pictures anyway, and gave them his blessing.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of surprised to hear that, but
I thought I saw somewhere that he it seems like he's come around to the early days and recognized that it was important an important part of his development or something. I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't.
Well, it makes me happy to know that he's able to recognize that. So, but I don't know what to say about it. It's. If a lot of people think that With Sympathy is a lot different than the rest of the albums, and it might be because it's the only one I'm on. I don't know, but but it could be.
Well, there was a big turnover in the band after.
Oh, there always is. I mean, you've seen the list in Wikipedia.
Oh, now
the number of people that have been in the band. I mean, it's like 100 people. I mean, I'm not even that special anymore. I'm just like 1 out of 100 or something. So,
but right after, it was shortly after the album. They were like, you guys, like a bunch of the guys. I mean, everybody but Al. Is that right? Everybody but Al left.
Yeah, pretty much.
So there was a big turnover there.
After the album and after the tour, I think we took a little time off, and then we went back into to do some demos at a studio up in Evanston, and I think we were down back to a 4-piece at that point, and. The band always changed. It always changed, and like I said, even the other two guys that were in the band at the time, Stephen George and Brad Helene, Mark Pothier, who was from Boston, he went back home, I think, and Brad was from Boston too, though. But I think they stuck around for a while. They might have even played on some things from Twitch.
Okay.
And we all worked on these demos, but I think that it was kind of petering out about then. And I think there was 2 years or 2 or 3 years in between With Sympathy and Twitch, I believe.
I think
it's 83 and 86. So,
yep.
I mean, there was some dead time there, I don't know. But I was just going to say that, it never struck me, With Sympathy never struck me as being too poppy or too fluffy or too flowery. I mean, because quite honestly, in addition to all the bands that we're listening to here, I mean, when I listened to a lot of Sparks, I mean, I liked Pet Sounds, I never heard anybody play anything from any Beach Boys on the tour bus ever. I mean, that never happened, but, or Sparks for that matter. But, to me, it didn't seem that much different. I mean, Kraftwerk and stuff like that, I thought was kind of, pop melodies and pop sounds and stuff, and I never had anything against pop music, I mean, I'm not, it doesn't really matter. It'd be great to do an album that had 8 or 9 different genres on it, as far as I'm concerned. But but the fact that it's discredited because it's too popish. I mean, I don't really understand that. I don't understand the point of view either. So.
Well, and it's it's got an edge to it. I mean, even it's not. I mean, you can think of sort of synth pop, right, and kind of go, all right. There is some very poppy synth pop, and with Sympathy is not that. I mean, there was always that an undercurrent, an edge there to it.
Yeah, and even when we played live, with other bands that were like synth pop bands, like Depeche Mode, who were really poppy at the time. I mean, when we played with them, I mean, they didn't have a drummer. I mean, we had the edge of having guitar and drums, and a lot of the other bands, it was just like a couple of keyboard players and a singer, and there's no drummer. There's just background tapes rolling and stuff. I mean, that was kind of where I thought maybe we should draw the line. But
you did some shows with A Flock of Seagulls too, didn't you?
Yeah, sure. And in fact, it was funny. We were playing out on Long Island, someplace like 50 miles from Manhattan, and Mike Score took a cab out to see us.
Jeez.
He came back on the bus, but it was so it was nice to have him show up in a taxi cab that he'd originated his journey in Midtown Manhattan somewhere. Jeez. The Iroquois Hotel, that's what it was. Everybody used to stay at the Iroquois. So.
Well, do you want to chat about Wax Tracks, or do you want to play more music and then chat about Wax Tracks?
Well, we could talk about Wax Tracks a little bit. I did want to mention that, and part of the scene leading up to Ministry, and 2 guys that really supported the band, before With Sympathy was ever even an idea, were Jim Nash and Danny Flesher, and they were the co-owners and life partners at Wax Tracks, and Wax Tracks was great because just all these songs that you're hearing now, even though you couldn't go to a regular record store and get any of this stuff, you could find it all at Wax Tracks. And Wax Tracks was it was walking into there and getting to know everyone and looking through the bins and taking your stuff up to the counter and actually having the folks behind the counter in a way critiquing your selections of, that you were going to purchase, and saying they're like, well, if you like this, you're probably not going to like that. So, they say maybe set that aside till next time and stuff. But I mean, it was so great. And they did a lot of promotions around town, and they promoted the band, when it first started, and funded a lot of the recording sessions and stuff, and stepped aside when Arista came on the scene. But, it was just such a great place to go to. It was such a part of the scene, just as much as any of the nightclubs were, any like Neo or O'Banion or Smart Bar or any place like that. And, it's... I really miss that vibe. I mean, that was, if there had been no Wax Tracks, there'd be no Ministry. There'd probably be no Thrill Kill Cult. And it was just, it was wonderful to be able to go there. And like I say, you walk in there on a Saturday afternoon, and it's like the whole place is just filled with your friends, and everybody's digging the same kind of music and comparing what they got, and so excited to see what came in that week, and it was just
because you're getting a bunch of imports and
absolutely. I mean, most of it was imports, and but I mean, that's how the vibe started. That's where the influences started from. I mean, nobody in Ministry ever said, that one Stones song. I mean, it was, even there's nothing wrong with the Stones. They're great, but you didn't need that. I mean, you weren't going to find that at Wax Tracks. It was just, it's not the kind of place you went to buy a Rolling Stones album.
Right.
So. I just wanted to, give a shout out to that crew, because they were very influential and very supportive, and really owe them a lot. And
well, so I'm looking at I always want to say set list, and it's not a set list, it's a playlist. I'm looking at the playlist.
Yeah, playlist.
Now, this band is not a Wax Tracks-esque act, so this is an interesting inclusion.
No, but it was the kind of song and the kind of band that would get a lot of airplay in the dance clubs, and I really I just ripped off Charlie Wilson's bass sounds and his and his style. At least I tried to approximate it, but it was so good, and it was just something that really influenced me a lot on bass synthesizer, and so I had to include this song.
So we're going to hear Burn Rubber from the Gap Band, and then perhaps a song that was influenced by the Gap Band.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. When the idea of Work for Love came around, if you listen to the rhythm of the bass track, they're very similar, and that's really where I kind of got the idea for the bass riff for Work for Love, and that the song kind of germinated from that, and the drum beat that Steve-O made up. I think just kicking around in the rehearsal studio one day, and it started with that, and so that's why I love the Gap Band so much.
All right, let's hear it. This is the Gap Band with Burn Rubber. This is 80s Hades, celebrating the 40th birthday of Ministry's debut album, With Sympathy, with Rob Roberts, founding member of Ministry, in the studio this evening.
love. Thank you very much, Los Angeles. This is the end of our tour, and I want to thank each and every one of you. Madness will be up soon, and they're brilliant. Thank you.
There is only one condition: stay in bed or in the kitchen.
That was Growzone with Ice Bear?
Ice bear.
Ice Bear. Polar Bear.
I believe that's what it means.
Yeah. So
I think Growzone means a gray zone.
Gray Zone?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is 80s Hades, and it is a special edition of 80s Hades. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the release of Ministry's debut album, With Sympathy. And Rob Roberts, founding member of Ministry, is in the studio.
And a Jackson County resident.
And a Jackson County resident, no less. Spinning some yarns of the days of With Sympathy. So, had some OMD in there. We talked about OMD a bit. Gang of Four. So Gang of Four with the reference to...
Gang of Four's got a reference to Work for Love in it, if you a lyrical reference. Of course, it predates Work for Love, but that's kind of where it came up with the working title of the song, which stuck. These next three songs, to finish us out, the first song is by a band that everybody loves and has heard of. But I went and saw them once at in Chicago about 1981, 1980, and it was at a rehearsal space, a large building, and they probably had a capacity of about 200, and there was no less than 500 people in there, and it was 100 degrees, and it was so fantastic. It was one of the only times I've ever been at a show where I feared for my life, because I thought the building was going to collapse, and it was they were so good live, and I think the show was promoted by Wax Trax, we talked about earlier. This is the kind of things that they used to do, and that'll lead into a Ministry song that's you probably never heard before. It's taken from a live show at the Palladium in L.A. During the With Sympathy tour. It was a song actually that Al and Frankie from Thrill Kill Cult and I cobbled together one hot summer afternoon about halfway through the With Sympathy tour in Al's coach house, and we only played it the last half of the tour, so it probably only got played 5 or 6 times or something, but got that coming up, and then we're gonna leave off on the song that back in those days that Ministry used to end with all the time, and it's a song called Overkill, and I can't remember a show that we did where we had any say-so in the length of the set. I mean, if somebody was saying you're limited to 30 minutes, but that didn't happen very often. Yeah. But just about every time we played, we ended with this song, which we're going to end with tonight. So
the hard man is from the Palladium. Is that the one? Was that Lawrence Walks? Is that what you said?
Well, yeah. It's funny because growing up, the accordion, my first instrument, and watching the Lawrence Welk show as a kid, and I never would have thought that my last show live show with Ministry would be at the Palladium, which is the same place that the Lawrence Welk show was filmed. So
Full circle.
yeah, I came full circle on that
Back
one.
to the
right?
future, full
I should have learned how to play it on accordion, I suppose.
And I've got the Overkill is live in Chicago. Do you know where in Chicago? Do you know where that's from?
Yeah, I was at a place called Off Broadway, and I believe that it was a show that was put out on the radio by WXRT, if I can mention a Chicago rival. Of course, they're an institution in Chicago, and they used to hire a truck and come around and record bands, and then they would do, they'd mix it down and edit it, and then they'd put it out like on a Friday night or a Saturday night and play for everybody. And I think it was probably the first time I ever heard us on the radio was when I heard our live set on WXRT radio, which
cool.
this song would have been the finale,
The closer.
Well, hey Doc, it's been nice being here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. And maybe if we haven't annoyed him too much, maybe Rob will come back at some point. Maybe play some,
accordion music.
Accordion music
Okay,
for us.
sure, I could do
play
that.
Revenge on the accordion for
I
us.
probably can. Yeah, I think I can.
Bring the accordion in. We'll play some post punk and throw in some accordion. It'll be great. So. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We're going to finish off with some Bauhaus and then, as mentioned, a couple of tracks from Ministry celebrating the 40th anniversary of the release of With Sympathy Ministry's debut album.